Ukraine was the ancient church of the Tithes destroyed? My name is Yana Matviychuk. I explain you. Sorry, it's an alert. I will continue the video. I will explain you now the situation regarding the ban of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. This situation has gained significant attention both in Ukraine and abroad. What does this mean? Is religion truly being banned in Ukraine, and was the Church of the Tithes destroyed? What is happening in Ukraine now? I will explain you the situation. In September 2024, the Ukrainian law on the protection of the constitutional order in the sphere of religious organizations came into force. According to this law, all religious organizations affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine must cease their activities. It is important to note here that in Russia, the Orthodox Church is a church of the state, and the Ukrainian people oppose having a Russian state church operate in Ukraine. Why is the Russian Orthodox Church a state church? The Russian Orthodox Church was created by Joseph Stalin, a tyrant, in 1943. Also, Stalin was a communist. He revived the Russian Orthodox Church during World War II because the Soviet Union needed weapons from the United States. However, Americans questioned why they should provide arms to an atheist Soviet Union. To address this, Stalin decided to revive the church and place it under his control. This situation remained unchanged. The Russian Orthodox Church remains under full state control and has essentially become an intelligence agency. This Moscow Church and its ties to the Russian Orthodox Church. So the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate is historically tied to the Russian Orthodox Church. After Ukraine regained independence in 1991, this Russian Church, Moscow Church in Ukraine, did not sever its connections with Russia and continued to operate in Ukraine. It is critical to understand that both the Russian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow function as a Russian state church. Their clergy obey the Kremlin and promote pro-Russian views. The Russian Church in Ukraine, it's like Anglican Church in the United States. The Russian Orthodox Church is the parent church of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. This makes it a foreign church operating in Ukraine. The existence of this Moscow Church in Ukraine can be compared to the Anglican Church in the United States, which was subordinated to London but operated in the United States. Essentially, it is a religious organization with foreign roots. In the United States, conservative Christians fought for years to separate from the Anglican Church, to rid themselves of colonial oppression. After gaining independence, the United States established the Protestant Episcopal Church of the United States. Similarly, Ukraine created the Orthodox Church of Ukraine to rid itself of Russian colonial influence. Both the USA in the past and Ukraine today use the same approach to eliminate foreign influence and build independent states. Thus, the ban of the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine is a necessary step for our national security. Similarly, the United States took action in the 18th century to rid itself of the Crown's influence. Air alert finished, but we still have possibility of attack. However, we are talking now about the Church of the Tithes, and we're standing in the old place where the Church of the Tithes was built and was destroyed by Tatars in 13th century. It was rebuilt in 19th century here on this place, but again destroyed by communists in the beginning of 12th century. But in 2012, Moscow Church, Church of the State of Russia, built there in the corner small building of the small church. It was illegal because the government didn't give permission to use that territory for the Russian church, but they built it anyway. So what Ukraine did, Ukraine in 2024 removed that small church, which Russians also called Church of the Tithes, and it was built illegally. I hope you understood that this is complete misinformation by Russian propaganda, and in Ukraine we do not ban any religion and we do not destroy churches. In Ukraine we banned the organization Moscow Church, which is connected directly to Moscow, and Ukrainian Orthodox people doesn't want this church to be in Ukraine. And this is a very important question for our national security. Why? I will explain you now. So, why Ukrainian people want Moscow Church to be banned in Ukraine? In 2018, the Ecumenical Patriarchate granted the Orthodox Church of Ukraine the Tomos of Autocephaly, creating an alternative to the Moscow Church. So Ukraine now has officially independent Ukrainian Church, Orthodox Church. Many people choose to join the independent Ukrainian Church, which led to transitions from one jurisdiction to another. However, pro-Russian clergy resisted these changes even when local communities voted to go from Russian Church to Ukrainian independent Church. And Russian Moscow Church representatives often forcefully retained their positions. What is important? The Moscow Church, which is acting in Ukraine, possesses a significant threat to national security, as evidenced by investigation conducted by the Security Service of Ukraine. Propaganda materials justifying Russian aggression were found in Moscow Church monasteries and churches. For instance, in 2022, during a search of the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra and other Moscow monasteries in Ukraine, brochures promoting the Russian world ideology were discovered. In 2023, evidence emerged that some Moscow Patriarchate clergy called for prayers for the Russian military, not as prayers for forgiveness, but for victory in the invasion of Ukraine. Bishop Longin of the Moscow Church in Ukraine was repeatedly accused of pro-Russian propaganda among his followers. So now let's talk in details about the Church of the Tithes. What happened and when? The Church of the Tithes was built in the 10th century during the reign of the Prince Volodymyr the Great as the first stone church in Kyivan Rus. Here we are on the Starokivska hill, and this is the place of the old Church of the Tithes. This is the huge building that was destroyed in 13th century by Mongols. It was the first and biggest stone building in Kyivan Rus. Here, the other church was rebuilt by Russian Emperor Nicholas I in 19th century, but in 1935, communists destroyed this church again, and the Church of the Tithes was never rebuilt again. This is a place where Russian Moscow Church in 2012 illegally built a small church just on the side of that big place where used to be a real Church of the Tithes. This is example of Russian propaganda because they named this small church which was demolished the same name as a historical building of 13th century. Now, according to the law, this building, illegal charge of Moscow propaganda, destroyed. This is historical place for all Ukraine, because on this hill, Kyiv and Ukraine was established over 1,000 years ago. And here you can see now this new building. This is a museum of history of Ukraine. But more than 1,000 years ago, this is the place where was the castle of the king of Kyiv. And for all of us, for Ukrainians, this is a very important place. This is a place where Ukraine started. That's why for Russia, who is fighting for our territory, was important to put here their own propaganda place. The church of the state of Russia, Moscow Church, just on the middle of the hill where Kyiv and Ukraine itself started over 1,000 years ago. What is interesting, when in 10th century this church, this Athena church, the church of the Tithes, was built in Kyiv, in the center of Kyivan Rus, only 3 centuries later, Moscow was established. Kyiv was the first city that was established much more before Russia and before Moscow. So please come to Kyiv and see by your own eyes that we have, this is the place where all the church of the Tithes was destroyed firstly by Mongols, then by communists. And there is no church here almost 100 years. But here, just few meters from the original church, was built the Moscow Russian small church, which they named the same as old church. And it existed only 8 years illegally, because all this historical territory is protected by UNESCO, and it's illegal to build here any new buildings. And especially for Ukrainians, we don't want that Russians will put their church in our historical places. Ukraine has its own independent Orthodox church, and we would like to not to have any Russian organizations. We don't like Russian church because this is a church of the state.